Dax and Bashir have their first date. A 6% tariff was imposed to help offset the lost income of Tarkalian sheep herders. And Chief says Worf is riding the men a bit hard. Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined by two very special guests, Mr. David Mack and Mr. John Ordover. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are reviewing Deep Space Nine Season 4, Episode 7, Starship Down, directed by Alexander Singer, written by, what a coincidence, David Mack and John J. Ordover. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good so far.
So far, it's like, we'll see what happens. I'm watching you.
Wait a minute. I had this episode directed by Alexander Sadig, and I may be wrong. So Singer. All right. So there's my first mistake of the day.
He's stuck in a turbo lift with Jadzia, so he's like, I wanna direct this one.
Yeah.
No, but it's Singer, yeah.
I talked.
We need 4 or 5 more takes on this one.
I talked.
Exactly.
I talked to Sid about the episode, and he said, "What will always be one of my faves because I got to spend the day after day cuddling with Terry Farrell in a turbo lift."
Yeah.
And that is a very good way to spend a work day.
Was it a turbo lift? That's just what I put, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
there was an elevator of some kind that was stuck.
It was a Defiant turbo lift.
Cool.
There's 2, starboard and port. They're located just forward of the transporter room.
Wow.
You need to get to one in a hurry.
Excellent knowledge. So, David and John, this is really cool. This is a real pleasure. We really appreciate you guys being flexible with your schedule. We had to kind of shuffle a couple things, and you guys were really great about it. You guys, you not only pitched this, I'm assuming, but you actually wrote the script, and that was something I wasn't aware that they would do. I mean,
we wrote a script.
We wrote a script, and then, of course, it goes through multiple revision after revision.
Sure.
Renee Echevarria, I believe, took it through 5 drafts internally.
Yeah, they took it through a bunch of drafts internally. But I got to tell you, it's been a very long time since I've watched the episode, probably 20 years, or at least, to be honest, watched it past the point where my name pops up on the screen. But, okay, well, that was fun. See, told you guys. We were kind of surprised, too. They liked our spec script.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too deep into this, because we want to know about that, but just so everybody at home knows, John and David are also credited with one other Deep Space Nine script that they wrote, and it's one that we've mentioned at least 20 times on this show, Cirroc. It's Only a Paper Moon.
We actually have the story credit for Paper Moon. Ron Moore was the teleplay writer.
Right.
If you don't mind the segue, I have a very funny story about my conversation with Ron Moore about nailing down the story. Is that
Absolutely.
Are you rigidly locked in?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Sitting in my office, I get a call from Ron, and we had pitched that story 3 years earlier.
Wow.
And it had gone through many permutations, and he called up, and he said, "Okay, we're buying the story." And I'm going, "Great." And I said, and we were completely new at that point, so I said, "As I understand it, you will now tell me the story. I will type it up, and then I will send it in to you, and you will send us money." And he said, "Yes, that's exactly how it works." So he's telling me the story, and it's a lot of the original elements, a lot of the whole idea of one set stayed in. And I'm typing it all up, and it's a great story for those who might not know. Nog has come back from having had his leg blown off, and they've replaced it, but he's having serious PTSD issues. So he goes into the holodeck.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into the holodeck and won't come out. And I'm getting through this whole thing, and then Ron said, and I'm writing it down, and it's very different from our original story, but nothing we would object to at all. And I'm typing it up, and we get to the end. He said, and Ron says, and that's the point where we find out why Nog won't come out of the holodeck. And I said, okay. why won't now come out of the holodeck? And he said, how the heck would I know, John? It's your story. I was like, okay. And then I pitched something really fast, and that's what they went with. So that's my fun story. But that's like, yeah. How would I?
And then when I was doing the draft of the new story document, because I was the draftsman back then, John would be the editor, and I would do the draft work. I sort of drew on some of my experience. I had been badly injured in a car accident when I was 21. So I sort of had that notion of having your youthful illusion of immortality shattered. And so I tried to put some of that into the story. And surprisingly, more of our actual words that we put on paper showed up on screen in Paper Moon, for which we have only story credit, than show up in Starship Down, where we have the written by credit. And it's just one of those funny things about how TV works and how the revision process works. Yeah.
But we were very happy with how everything turned out.
Oh, very.
Which is the only really important thing with the art thing. Basically, if you don't want a collaborative process, don't work in TV.
Right.
Yeah. That's just basically it. You can't take.
If you're precious about your words, it's the wrong medium.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And I would say to Dave, Dave, and I would say, Dave, did the check clear? And then everything's perfect.
25 years later, I have sort of come out on the other side of that. Now it's I understand it's a purely mercenary situation.
Yeah.
I take the money, I deliver the manuscript. What happens after that? Maybe I have some input, maybe I don't. I just think about what I buy with the check.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have complete creative control of how we spend the money.
Right. I have complete creative control over how often I pay my landlord. Apparently, I do it once per month.
Yeah.
Were you guys?
I just got a residual check for
$36. It was fabulous.
Yeah, for $36.
Wow.
So all these years later,
Free money, baby.
Paying off.
Speaking of paying rent, right? That should do it.
That'll do it.
What were you saying, Cirroc? Sorry.
No, I was curious to know what the phone call was like. 3 years later that you got the call, or was this a constant process?
It's only a Paper Moon that the call was 3 years later.
There was no intervening communication about it. We pitched it in 95. They bought it in 98. But between when we pitched it and they said, we like that, but we're not sure what to do with it, we'll get back to you. Well, we heard nothing. And then suddenly 3 years later, we heard, we're buying it. And
I had this obnoxious thing I would do with Dave. Whenever we sold something, I would call him up and I would say, Dave, I'm afraid I have some bad news. And he would say, oh, God, what the fuck happened now? Sorry, what the beep happened now? And I'd say, well, we just sold another story treatment. And he said, your definition of bad news is really weird. Well, with more profanity. But yeah, it just comes out of the blue. It just came out. We just forgotten it and moved on with our lives.
We'll have to come back when you guys actually get to that episode someday in the future. We can tell you more about how it originally began, what the original pitch was, all that sort of stuff. But obviously that takes us far off the beam from Starship Down, which is what brings us here today.
That was a really big episode, really important one.
Yeah.
The episode, but sticking with Starship Down, what happened with Starship Down was I'm driving home on a crowded highway, talking on my cell phone, which I should not have been, to Dave.
I thought we were in the car together.
No, you were home. It was a phone thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember being in the car.
You don't have to remember shit. Sorry, we're all we're old. We don't have to remember things.
See, I'm pretty sure we were together in your car going somewhere on the BQE.
Well, let's see if we agree. Okay, then I'm going to tell the next part, and we'll see if we agree on that.
Probably not.
Dave said to me, I really wish there was some way we could do Das Boot as a
I said, I want to sink the Defiant.
Right, and
he said, okay, I'm going to need a little more context.
A little more context.
I said, well, last night I watched Das Boot, and I would love to do an episode of Trek that feels like Das Boot, which is a German submarine film produced back in the 80s. I really love that movie because I was a film school nerd, and I love submarine warfare stories just in general.
I just wish there was some way to do it for Star Trek? And I said, there is.
And so we started talking it out.
Yeah, we just started talking it out. Then they bought it. They bought it actually pretty quickly. And what Ira said was,
they bought it right off the verbal pitch over the phone.
Yeah, he said,
wow.
He said, and we didn't mention that it was based on a movie because you just don't do that.
Right, you don't tell them your inspiration.
You don't tell them where you got the idea. And Ira says, I've been looking for a way to do Das Boot on Deep Space Nine.
Wow, isn't that convenient?
David, do you remember it that way too?
Vaguely.
I did the phone calls with.
I was on the other line though. I remember you had me in the cubicle outside, and we did a. I wasn't allowed to talk, but I was like monitoring the call.
And
so there was a phone involved somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, that was the pitch session. That happened in February, March of '95.
Right.
Okay.
And they later came back to us and said, "How would you feel about it being the atmosphere of a gas giant instead of water? Because it turns out water is too expensive." And
Smart.
we said, actually, that's a lot cooler.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more science fiction-y. Although I felt we'd had a lot of stuff in the pitch about weird CGI fish and stuff like that coming by on the view screen that we thought would be really funny. And that all got lost. But it doesn't matter. It was cooler. It was a much better science fiction idea. And affordable, which was the...
Yeah, because it came down to just billowing vapor through the corridors. Of course, I found out later, while researching a Star Trek novel, that in a gas giant atmosphere, the pressure on the gas is so great that it actually becomes a superheated liquid metal, which would have been far deadlier and, again, extremely difficult to animate and very expensive to produce. So
nobody tell Dave that going faster than light is impossible.
Theoretically, it's possible. It's just generating enough energy to fold space in the Alcubierre drive model is currently prohibitive.
Suddenly, you guys are reminding me of that too. Those two engineers in the engineering room talking all the nerd talk. Yeah, they were great.
One of the odd, minor, but unique things to happen with Starship Down is that Starship Down is actually the name that was on the pitch.
Yeah.
And it made it through all...
they actually pluralized it to Starships Down because originally it was Defiant and Karma Ship, and they thought it made more sense to pluralize it. But at the last minute, they pulled back and went back to my original pitch.
I'm glad you mentioned that because on CBS All Access, it's called Starships Down, pluralized, but on IMDb and everywhere else I'd seen it, it was singular.
Well,
it's probably because they drew it off of an early draft script or an early production order.
Or because they're really sloppy. Not that I would say that.
No.
Again.
But, in fact, all the streaming services, though I won't get into it, are extremely sloppy with their write-ups.
They have spoilers galore.
They only have 25 words. By the way, you'll notice how I said I really shouldn't go off on this, and I did anyway. That's a hallmark. They only have 25 words, and they use the 25 words for half the movies are the same. This is a movie about a young girl who, and it's no, if you only have 25 words, start with the point. But anyway,
blurb copies.
I am momentarily out of words. Go on.
Well, I did want to bring something up that I first watched Deep Space Nine many, many years ago.
Us too.
And this was one of the first episodes I really remember seeing. I kind of joined in later on, and this was the one that left the strongest imagery in my young mind at the time, because when I look back at my years of watching Deep Space Nine, before this rewatch that Cirroc and I are having, many, many of the moments and the images that I remember of Deep Space Nine are in that episode. Probably top 5 to 10 most memorable moments in any series for me personally. Cool. The moments with the scenes, like the imagery of these two behind me, Quark and Hanok, that was very memorable. The scene with Jadzia and Bashir also stuck in my mind. and the stuff with Kira praying and telling stories and demanding that Sisko stay alive. Those three plots or sub stories just have always stayed in my mind as some of the most memorable imprints.
Well, what sticks in my mind is the photon torpedo in the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Which got copied in season 2 of the Discovery.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He ripped off our gag.
Well, yes, but
not that you would ever say that.
It was an homage.
It was an homage. We'll call it an homage.
A reference. Yeah.
Actually, I think one of my favorite images is one that John came up with. He mentioned it to them during the pitch session, or maybe during the break session when we were breaking the episode. And he said, whatever else we do, we should end the episode on a shot of Sisko smiling the way we always used to end on the upbeat shot of Kirk smiling at the end of an original series episode. And it's not something they really ever did. It was a very somber, very serious show. This is one of the rare examples of an episode of DS9 that ends with a smile on Sisko's face.
Right. And a big, beautiful smile with Kira with the hat on her.
With the hat.
It was adorable. I loved it.
It was a peculiar, an unusually upbeat moment of ending for that series.
Right.
And of course, we got in our absolutely favorite line.
How long? 20 minutes. You've got 10.
You've got 10.
You've got 10,
which is a standard Star Trek line that they, for some reason, hadn't used in all of TNG. TNG had this odd habit of saying, we must solve this problem or this planet will be destroyed in 3 days.
Well, you have the whole episode to...
Yeah. And so you're saying this is not, in fact, a particularly tense situation. You have plenty of time to solve it. I'm going to get it.
Unless you're living on the planet, in which case 3 days may not seem like a lot of time.
No, I understand.
I can't even pack up my apartment in 3 days.
Well, true. But
I still remember, though, the reaction we got
from Hans. Is that more of a you problem, Dave?
That's sort of. I remember when we turned in the
line hadn't been used before. That you've only got 10 minutes. How long will it take? 20 minutes. You've only got 10.
That was used constantly on the original series.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But somehow it skipped over TNG, so we brought it back to DS9.
Yeah.
I like that.
My favorite reaction, though, let's see, there were two. I think they were both from Hans Beimler. Once he commented that they loved our first draft teleplay, and if they'd had a spare $100 million sitting around, they would have produced it. But they didn't, so rewrites were required. Yeah. And the second was something that was only said to me and John relayed it to me. John turned in the script. I guess we FedExed it or whatever back in those days. You actually had to turn in a physical document. And Hans's reaction when he confirmed receipt of the script was, I'm so glad the script is here. Now the writing can begin.
Yeah.
And I swear it was like a knife to the heart. Now the writing can begin. We've been drafting this thing for 2 weeks, thinking about it for months. Now the writing can begin.
Right. But as a longtime editor, I'm much more comfortable with the rewriting process than Dave was at the time.
Yeah, I've since adapted to that. 36 novels later, I
am going to start what Hans said in the break session, and you can finish it. Okay? If this is a consular ship,
where is the ambassador? Hans basically set up the line. He was doing a back and forth with Ira, and one of us jumped in with that line, and Ira said, "Freaks! I'm surrounded by freaks." And Hans said, "It's your fault, Ira. You hired
us all." Yeah. Was it Hans who threw a tribble at me?
Possibly. I think it was either him or Robert Hewitt Wolf. Yeah. I remember when we showed up, we were waiting because Ira was late. Right. He came in on crutches, I think with his leg in a cast. And he was grumbling. I'm not going to say about who. I'm not going to drop this name. But there was somebody within the Trek family who he was grumbling quite angrily about. And I heard this as he was coming in past me. And he was wearing his Leon, the professional mirror sunglasses, his trademark sunglasses. Right. And I said, well, Ira, if you decide to kill him, I'll be happy to drive the Bronco for you. Hi, Dave Mack.
Zip.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice.
Wow. So also, there was something, I mean, first of all, I found this to be much more of a bottle episode than I remembered it being when we watched it during because I remember it being like again, so memorable and epic, and there's so many great moments and all this stuff going on. But then when I watched it, I was like, wow, this is a really easy thing. That's probably what they loved about it on top of the story, was that they could you just get these tiny little sets, a little nook for Jadzia to snuggle in, and a little floor area for Sisko and Kira. Is beautiful. It's perfect.
Halfway through the break session, Khan said, "Hey, this is a bottle show."
Yeah.
A bottle show. And I said, yeah, we pitched it as a bottle show because we figure the cheaper we can make it, the more likely you are to buy it from us, because
then you save money for your episodes that you do later.
Spend it on a big special effects thing that you want to do.
And that's how Paper Moon got sold as well. Originally, it got sold as a bottle pitch. I know we're jumping ahead to the wrong episode here. Originally, it was all supposed to happen in Quark's Bar. We pitched them essentially an episode of Cheers redesigned for Star Trek, a whole episode, all 43 minutes on one set, with everybody coming and going from one set. So you'd only have to light one set for the week.
How much it costs just to light one set for a day. And we said, if we keep this to one set, we'll save them a hell of a lot of money.
Light one set for the week.
Let's keep the sets to an absolute minimum.
No new sets, no new construction.
Which we done in a story that didn't get produced that we sold to Voyager too. That one was just everything in sickbay. Just like
episode of MASH.
And if there was advice I would give to everyone who wants to pitch TV, not that we're the world's most successful TV pitchers, it's this. It's not a small movie. It is a filmed stage play. So if you don't have to build a set, they were much more likely to buy an outside pitch.
Of course, that was back in the 90s. Really, TV doesn't work like that anymore. It's all closed rooms, shorter seasons, higher per episode budgets.
And CGI
they really don't let freelancers like us pitch anymore.
Yeah. So we're going to take our break in just a minute here. I do want to talk about where it looks like they did put in a couple extra bucks. Was with 4 guest stars or guest actors, maybe 1 guest star and 3 guest actors, which was different than what we usually see in Deep Space Nine. We kind of got to see a few extra crewmen, which I thought was great. But we'll take a super quick break, and we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.